Ladies and gents, welcome back. If you think you missed a video yesterday, well, there wasn't one. We were out of town. We went off to the lake. Beautiful, beautiful place here. And we got to meet up with another fellow freedom fighter. This is Sam. You may recognize him if you were following the convoy in Ottawa back in the wintertime. He was a mechanic that drove all the way out from British Columbia to make sure that those trucks kept running. Yeah, this is Sam, fellow freedom fighter. But let's move on to the story. Today we're talking about Trudeau government's counterintuitive attack on the food and energy is perplexing at a time that we're facing unprecedented cost of living increase via Trudeau's inflation. How can he justify this irrational decision? And this is, of course, referring to the reduction on nitrogen fertilizers that the Trudeau government is putting in place. We've heard a lot about what's going on in Europe because of the same reduction plan as, well, essentially sent down to them by decree from the World Economic Forum. But this is coming here to Canada as well. So prepare, get ready for this. Trudeau pushes ahead on fertilizer reduction as provinces and farmers cry foul. Here's an article from the Toronto Sun. I'll leave a link in the description down below for this one. You guys can read into it. But I'm going to be reading from the Counter Signal as a similar article here. We have the Trudeau moves forward with fertilizer reduction climate policy. As per the government of Saskatchewan news release, both Alberta and Saskatchewan's ministers of agriculture have expressed profound disappointment in Trudeau's decision to attempt to reduce nitrogen emissions from fertilizer. We're really concerned that this arbitrary goal, Saskatchewan Minister of Agriculture David Merritt said. The Trudeau government has apparently moved on from their attack on oil and gas industry and set their sights on Saskatchewan farmers. You may notice that a lot less people are talking about COVID these days, and it's more, let's talk about this environmental impact that the farmers are not impacting the environment. In fact, we'll get into this, but the farmers have been the efficiency is just through the chains in the farming industry, and these reductions are just ludicrous. According to Alberta Agriculture Minister Nate Horner, this has been the most expensive crop anyone has put in following the difficult year on the prairies. The world is looking for Canadians to increase production to be a solution for global food shortages. The federal government needs to display that they understand this. They owe it to our producers. And he's obviously referring to the fact that there are a bunch of other reasons why around the world farms are producing less. We've got the conflict going on in Ukraine. We have nitrogen fertilizers the rise of the prices of nitrogen fertilizers, which are absolutely necessary for the farming output that needs to be put out to feed the world out here. And not to mention our farmers out in Prince Edward Island that were hit with the farmer's wart thing, which was a nothing burger, and it was just it's a scenario that it's a bug that gets into the potatoes that makes them look bad. There's nothing wrong with the potatoes. There's a select few, and there was a ban on exporting those potatoes for a considerable amount of time. Previously reported by the Counter Signal in December 2020, the Trudeau government unveiled their new climate plan with a focus on reducing nitrous oxide emissions from fertilizers by 30% below 2020 levels by 2030. That plan is now into effect, though the government refuses to acknowledge that nitrous oxide emissions can be reduced without drastically reducing fertilizers and thus crop production. Fertilizers play a role in the agriculture sector success and have contributed to record harvests in the last decade. They have helped drive increase in crop yields, grain sales, and exports. A new release from Agricultural Agri-Food Canada reads, however, nitrous oxide emissions, particularly those associated with synthetic nitrogen fertilizers, have also grown significantly. That is why the government of Canada set the national fertilizer emissions reduction target, which is part of the commitment to reduce total greenhouse gas emissions in Canada by 40 to 45% by 2030. This is a tacit admission that any attempt at lower emissions by reducing nitrogen fertilizer would consequently lower crop yields over the next decade, hurting the agricultural sector and, more importantly, hurting farmers. So we have this video here by, this is Quick Dick McDick. He's a farmer, I believe from Alberta. And he did a video, amazing video. I'll leave a link in the description down below for the entire video so you can watch it. But here's a little excerpt from it, him expressing his opinion on this whole thing.
Anybody with half a brain would look at this through a lens of, hey, how much food do we produce versus how much fertilizer do we use? But not Trudeau, because he doesn't have one of those things. No, we just want an absolute 30% reduction on fertilizer emissions. We already implement best practices in agriculture because it's good for our land, it's good for the environment, and it's good for our business. A 30% reduction in fertilizer use would be a $48 billion loss to the agriculture industry by 2030, and it would also make food more scarce. And the food that was available would be way more expensive than it is now, today. Can you imagine that?
So, again, I'll leave a link in the description down below for that video, but he goes into it in depth on how crop rotation, there's a bunch of other strategies where they're not actually the nitrogen that goes into farming, they don't want it wasted. They don't want it wasted and getting seeped into water supplies and things like that. So they spend a lot of money working with scientists to make sure that they're getting every little bang for their buck that they possibly can. They don't want to spend money on fertilizer that's just going to go elsewhere. They want it to go into the plants and the crops that they are farming. And yes, he goes much more in depth than I can with my limited knowledge on farming. So please go watch that video. Link is in the description down below. But let's get back to this. And indeed, according to a report from Fertilizer Canada, total emission reductions puts a cap on total emissions allowable from fertilizers at 30% below 2020 levels. The yield of Canadian crops directly linked to proper fertilizer application. This creates a ceiling on Canadian agriculture productivity well below 2020 levels. It is estimated that 30% absolute emissions reduction for farmers with 1,000 acres of canola and 1,000 acres of wheat stands to have their profits reduced by approximately, and this is up to 40,500 annually. In 2020, Western Canadian farmers planted approximately 20.8 million acres of canola. Using these values cumulatively, farmers' revenues from canola could be reduced by up to $441 million on an annual basis, while wheat farmers could experience a reduction of up to $400 million, or approximately $400 million. This is ridiculous. Moreover, Fertilizer Canada doesn't believe that forcibly decreasing fertilizer will even lower greenhouse gases, but could lead to carbon leakage elsewhere. Nonetheless, Trudeau's government is moving forward with farmer groups speaking to Farmers Forum, now wondering if he's intentionally trying to cause a food shortage, which Trudeau previously told Canadians to prepare for. Unbelievable. So this is where we stand now. The Dutch farmers have been fighting against the Mark Rutte's policies in their land. We saw over the weekend many Canadians getting together and standing in solidarity with the Dutch farmers that are fighting for their livelihoods over in the Netherlands. And standing with them is also farmers from all over Europe. We have the Italians, the Polish, just to name a few. It's getting big because this is becoming a big problem. And you haven't seen the effects of it just yet. Yes, inflation is happening, and inflation due to the inflating the the currency, our monetary policy, has started to creep in now, but we haven't seen the effects yet of what's happening here in the agricultural industry. And if we keep pushing the limits, we're going to see massive prices in the food markets and huge shortages. So this is what we have to look forward to. So if you haven't yet, go stand with a farmer. Go back these farmers, because they're hurting and they're getting hit by, well, the nitrogen, these new nitrogen laws, but they've also been hit drastically by the carbon taxes for which we're seeing the effects of now. So that's all I got for you on this video this morning. I hope you guys all had a great weekend. I know we did, me and the family did, but we'll keep you posted, and we'll see you guys all in the next video. Keep on trucking.